Today we're going to be talking about how to use sound effects. Sound effects are a great way to draw attention to your B-roll. B-roll being cards you throw up for your points, any kind of pictures you show, any kind of just really anything other than just your main video. The problem often is that when people use sound effects, they use them for everything. Or there are people who they use it for one super important thing, like hitting the subscribe button, like they have an animation. They just click on it and you hear a click. But the question is, how do you find a medium so that you're not being this person who's using them all the time on everything and it gets super distracting, but maybe you don't want to be this person who's only using it for one thing either. You actually like using sound effects. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Why do we need to make sure that our sound effects are being used appropriately? Well, actually it's really simple to understand. And that is when you have two things that are coming into your ears at the same time, they're competing. And if you are, really you're trying to compete for attention between what you're saying, and if you have something that's being shown and you're having a sound to bring attention to that, then they're competing for attention, and you want their attention to be on both of them. And if people are always being pulled over here and over there and like they can't actually listen to what you're saying, they're just going to turn you off and you haven't done any good. So how do we make sure that your sound effects aren't being super distracting to the point where people are turning you off? I would say that the rule is if you're going to talk about it as well as show it, then it probably doesn't need to have a sound effect. Now, this could obviously be kind of on the more conservative side, and I get it. Maybe there are a couple things that you might want to break the rule on, and there are some times, but use judgment, of course. If you're going to use a ton of B-roll, then really make sure that you pick only those few that are super important for you to make sure that people actually see this. An example could be if you're talking about a video that you've made in the past that's talking on a topic that you don't want to talk about right now because you have already covered it and you don't want to spend the time, of course, then you're probably going to show the thumbnail. When you're showing the thumbnail, obviously the goal is to get people to watch that video. Putting a sound effect on there could mean the difference between a few more views versus not. A thumbnail could be one idea. Using sound effects to show, if you move from point to point and you like to have this massive B-roll card that shows what the next point is and you like to make it super obvious where you are in the video, which, I totally get that. I would be all down for that too. Having a sound effect for that could just be like an added sort of an idea. It could go without it, but also it could be something just to kind of help fill in the fact that you're not talking during this, or if you are talking, then I would definitely say don't do that. Another thing is pictures. Pictures could really go either way. But the reason that you're using a picture instead of just simply talking about it is probably because it's more difficult to understand just hearing it, and showing it can make it so much easier. So using a picture for something like that and using a sound effect could be really good to show, hey, this is here, this is for you, this isn't for me, and this isn't... this is all for your benefit, really, is the point. Drawing attention to that could be a good idea. But also, you don't have to on that one either. That's why I think pictures can be a tad bit more difficult. Now that we kind of understand at least the general idea of what sound effects should be used on, because there isn't a hard and fast rule. Just keep in mind that things are really going to compete when you have multiple things going on. And you just make sure you go into whatever software you're using and just kind of take a listen, pass through it a couple times, and listen to how loud the notification, the sound effect is compared to the person speaking. So just make sure that it's at a respectable volume. Now you have to choose a sound effect. And I think there's only one rule, honestly, for choosing one. Obviously, the best thing to be was if you fit in a particular niche, that you can have a really cool sound effect that sounds exactly like what you're talking about. Like if you're a photographer, having a camera shutter, that's exactly it represents your niche perfectly. But obviously that's 1% of the millions of people who are making videos on YouTube, and I totally understand if that's not your thing. Just pick one at that point. There's no need to get hung up on, well, this one doesn't quite sound like my niche, and this one doesn't sound like this, or blah, blah, blah. Just pick one that you like. Go through a library. Just pick one that you like. You don't put a lot of thought into it, and you can always change it later when you get bored of it. But I would say that there's one thing, and that is make sure that it's not super long. Like I keep saying, sound effects are going to compete for attention over your speaking. If you have a sound effect that's too long, like if you have a picture that shows up and you go ding and you're still talking, then people, it's just going to be super annoying and super confusing. Like, what is going on here? So make it just like a bell, just like a ding, and it's done, right? It lets people know it's there, and you can continue moving on. And it really was a moment. It wasn't even a distraction hardly at that point. Not really. So I would say just make sure that when you're using sound effects, just make sure that it's not directly competing. It's meant to just draw attention. Like, I'm here. That's all that it's supposed to do. Like, I get it. Obviously, some people want to use more than others. Just keep that in mind. Please keep it in mind. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video was good. I realize it's not like hard and fast. It just takes some practice to get used to, and just, better safe than sorry, I would say. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.